What if I told you the most iconic car of the 1950s wasn't just a pretty face? It was a weapon on wheels, born from post-war ambition, built with aircraft-inspired engineering, and nearly too advanced for the world it entered. This isn't just a story about a car with fancy doors. It's about a machine that rewrote the rules of performance, flipped automotive design on its head, and made the world stop and stare. The 1957 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL wasn't supposed to exist. And when it did, it didn't just impress. It terrified the competition. With gullwing doors that opened like a bird of prey and an engine pulled straight out of a racetrack fantasy, this car didn't follow the trends of the 1950s, it set them. But beneath all the elegance and innovation lies a story most people have never heard, of risk, radical engineering, and a legacy that continues to cast a shadow over every sports car that followed. So what made the 300 SL so far ahead of its time? And why do collectors now treat it like a crown jewel of automotive history? Let's uncover the secrets behind one of the boldest machines Mercedes ever built. 1. Born from the battlefield. The 300 SL wasn't dreamed up in a design studio, it was forged in the aftermath of war. In the early 1950s, Mercedes-Benz was still recovering from the devastation of World War II. Factories had been bombed, the company's reputation was in pieces, and the idea of building a world-class sports car seemed impossible. But Mercedes wasn't interested in surviving, they wanted to dominate. Their engineers went straight to the racetrack. In 1952, they shocked the world by winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans with a sleek, silver prototype that barely looked street legal. That machine would become the blueprint for the 300 SL. And the SL? It stood for Super Light, or Super Light, a nod to its ultralight tubular space frame. This wasn't just engineering, it was wartime technology repurposed for speed. Light, fast, and unforgiving. The goal wasn't to make a luxury car for the elite. It was to show the world that Germany could still build the fastest, most advanced machines on the planet. And do it with style. That mission became the soul of the 300 SL. But if the racing pedigree impressed people, it was the doors that stopped them in their tracks. 2. Gullwing doors. Not just for show. At first glance, it looked like a design gimmick, gullwing doors that opened upward like the wings of a bird. But the truth? They weren't a stylistic choice at all. They were a necessity born from radical engineering. You see, the 300 SL's frame wasn't like any other car on the road. To make it incredibly light yet strong, Mercedes engineers created a tubular space frame, essentially a skeleton of thin steel tubes, woven together like a cage. It was brilliant for performance, but there was a problem. The frame's high side sills made traditional doors impossible. So instead of changing the frame, they reimagined the entrance. The result? The now iconic gullwing doors. What started as a workaround became a symbol of status and innovation. Opening them felt theatrical, almost like stepping into the cockpit of a fighter plane. People had never seen anything like it, and suddenly, the 300 SL wasn't just fast, it was futuristic. But there was a catch. Getting in and out wasn't exactly easy. Drivers had to contort themselves over those high sills, hardly graceful. And in the event of a rollover? Well, let's just say you'd better hope the car landed upright. Still, the gullwings became a legend of their own, forever tying the 300 SL to an image of high performance wrapped in drama. And while the doors got all the attention, it's what was under that impossibly long hood that made this car truly terrifying. 3. The engine that broke the rules. If the gullwing doors made people stare, the engine made their jaws drop. Tucked beneath that sweeping hood was something the world had never seen in a road car, a 3.0-liter inline-six engine with mechanical fuel injection. At a time when most cars relied on basic carburetors, Mercedes ripped the playbook apart and introduced a technology pulled straight from their race cars, and even fighter planes. It wasn't just advanced, it was outrageous. This wasn't a gentle cruiser. This was a fire-breathing machine that cranked out 215 horsepower, a staggering number for 1957. It launched the 300 SL from 0 to 60 in just over 7 seconds, a time that embarrassed many so-called sports cars of the era. Top speed? A mind-bending 160 miles per hour. That made it the fastest production car in the world at the time. And it wasn't just raw power. The fuel injection system delivered smoother acceleration, better fuel delivery at high speeds, and an engine note that sounded like precision wrapped in fury. Every press of the throttle felt surgical. Violent, but refined. But this kind of innovation came with its own risks. The early fuel systems were complex and temperamental. If you didn't know how to drive the 300 SL properly, it could feel like a beast waiting to bite back. Still, For the drivers who understood it, this engine didn't just break the rules, it rewrote them. And all that power needed a chassis that could keep up. That's where Mercedes did something even crazier. 4. Handcrafted speed machine. The 300 SL wasn't mass-produced. It was built, one careful step at a time. Every component, every weld, every panel was touched by human hands. Mercedes didn't just assemble cars, they crafted them. And nowhere was that more obvious than in the 300 SL's innovative tubular space frame chassis. This complex network of lightweight steel tubes weighed just 82 kilograms, yet it was incredibly rigid, giving the car a new perfect balance of strength and agility. Most manufacturers would have thought it too complex, too expensive. Mercedes didn't care. They weren't trying to make the most cars, they were trying to make the best. And it showed. The frame gave the 300 SL razor-sharp handling, especially by 1950s standards. It wasn't a car you simply drove, it was one you had to master. There was no power steering, no traction control, no electronic safety nets. It was just you, the machine, and the road. But Mercedes didn't stop at performance. They wrapped that race-bred skeleton in a body of rolling art, long, low, and sculpted with curves that made onlookers freeze. Painted in silver, black, or deep red, the 300 SL looked fast even when it stood still. Inside, the attention to detail continued. The stitching, the materials, the layout, it all felt deliberate. The car was raw but refined, luxurious but unapologetically mechanical. The 300 SL wasn't built to impress, it was built to intimidate. And yet, that's exactly why some of the most powerful and famous people in the world couldn't wait to get their hands on one. 5. Celebrity magnet and global status symbol. Owning a 300 SL in the late 50s wasn't just about speed, it was about status. This wasn't a car you bought to blend in. It was a declaration. And the world's elite took notice. Hollywood legends like Clark Gable and Sophia Loren were seen stepping out of 300 SLS, their gullwing doors opening like wings on a red carpet. Royalty, racing champions, and the wealthiest entrepreneurs all wanted a piece of it. Even Juan Manuel Fangio, 5-time Formula One world champion, was drawn to its raw brilliance. But it wasn't just famous faces. It was where the 300 SL showed up that cemented its icon status. It cruised through the streets of Monaco, lounged along the Riviera, and roared through alpine roads without breaking a sweat. Wherever it went, it stole the scene. It wasn't a car you parked in a garage, it was a machine that turned every public appearance into a spectacle. Back then, there were no Instagram influencers or viral videos. But if there were, the 300 SL would have broken the internet. It became more than a vehicle. It was a moving symbol of wealth, power, and daring. And yet, behind all the glamour was a cockpit that reminded drivers. This wasn't a toy, it was a weapon. Because once you stepped inside, the mood changed. 6. The interior wasn't just style, it was strategy. From the outside, the 300 SL looked like a sculpture in motion. But once you climbed inside, awkwardly, thanks to those high sills, you quickly realized this wasn't just about luxury or looks. This was a driver's machine, and every inch of the interior was designed with intent. The bucket seats weren't plush, they were purposeful. Upholstered in leather or a bold plaid fabric, they gripped the driver in place like a race harness. Comfort took a backseat to control. The steering wheel? Thin-rimmed, large, and built for feedback. It tilted down for easier access, but once in place, it demanded your full attention. The gauge cluster was angled sharply toward the driver, because in this car, you were the pilot. Every dial, every switch felt mechanical, heavy, and deliberate. There were no distractions, no infotainment systems, just pure analog focus. The interior was tight, not cramped. It kept you centered, alert, connected. Even the layout had a racer's logic. The pedals were offset to accommodate the high transmission tunnel, a quirk that threw off casual drivers but rewarded those who adapted. This was the kind of cockpit that whispered, "If you're not paying attention, don't bother starting the engine." Because once you did, the 300 SL came alive, and it didn't care if you were ready. And that's the thing. Driving it wasn't easy. But for those who dared, what came next was unforgettable. 7. The cost of brilliance. For all its beauty, prestige, and precision, the 300 SL wasn't gentle. It didn't make things easy. It didn't want to. There was no power steering, no electronic aids, no forgiveness. Every movement, every gear shift, every corner, every throttle input was a test. And if you didn't respect it, the car would let you know.
Fast. This was a machine that fought back.
It kicked, it grumbled, it demanded attention. You had to be in tune with it, not just physically, but mentally. It was heavy at low speeds, twitchy at high ones, and always alive in your hands. But here's the twist: if you understood its rhythm, if you gave it what it asked for, it became something transcendental.
The handling was razor-sharp.
The throttle response was immediate. The sound of the inline-six roaring to life under that long hood?
Pure symphony.
Not loud, not crude, just mechanical perfection singing in harmony.
It didn't pamper you. It challenged you. And that challenge?
That edge of danger? That's what made it irresistible. The 300 SL wasn't meant for the casual Sunday cruiser. It was meant for drivers who craved control, who earned their speed. And when they did, the car didn't just deliver, it made them feel invincible. That's why it's still revered today, not just as a machine, but as a rite of passage. And in the decades since, its legend has only grown. 8. Legacy worth millions. Decades have passed, but the 300 SL's roar still echoes through time. Today, it's more than just a classic car. It's a cultural monument, a living artifact of engineering daring and design purity. When one crosses the auction block, bidding doesn't start, it erupts. These machines now fetch millions of dollars, often doubling or tripling the price of newer exotics.
Why? Because no one builds cars like this anymore.
Museums display it behind velvet ropes. Collectors store it in climate-controlled vaults. But even with all that reverence, when a 300 SL hits the road, it still moves like it was born yesterday.
Its value goes beyond money.
It's about what it represents, a time when innovation wasn't limited by caution, when design followed emotion, and when cars weren't just transportation, they were statements.
The 300 SL didn't follow trends. It made them.
It inspired generations of engineers, designers, and dreamers. It redefined what a production car could be and forced the entire industry to raise its game. And even now, as electric motors and autonomous systems take over the streets, the 300 SL stands untouched.
Uncompromised.
A mechanical time capsule that still turns heads, sparks envy, and stirs something deeper in the hearts of car lovers. Because for all the cars that came after, none have matched its fearless brilliance. But why does this car, born nearly 70 years ago, still haunt the dreams of every gearhead alive? That answer lies in how it ended and what it left behind. The 1957 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL wasn't just a car, it was a revolution on wheels. Born from war, engineered with obsession, and driven by legends, it redefined what was possible in its time.
And today, it still does.
Because some machines don't age, they ascend.